The storm ate the sky and left nothing but white ruin. Snow roared sideways across the dead plain of Red Hen 9, burying towers, machines, and bones in a single endless breath. Cade Vaughn pushed through the gale with his head down, visor cracked, oxygen mask flickering weakly. Every inhale burned. The recycled air had turned to frost inside the filter. The HUD on his wrist glowed red, core heat critical. His boots sank knee-deep into drifts that swallowed whole vehicles. Once, this place had been a mining colony, a hub of commerce and laughter and neon nights. Now, it was a mausoleum of silence. Only the distant creak of collapsing steel and the scream of the wind kept him company. His coat, long since torn, flapped uselessly at his legs. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. Couldn't remember the taste of warmth, only the ache of survival. Every step felt like wading through the grave of a civilization that had forgotten it ever lived. When his knees hit the snow beside a half-buried transit post, Cade knew the end had come. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. He would die here, one more name erased beneath the ice. Then, through the blinding white, something moved. A pulse of light orange, faint, alive. For a heartbeat, he thought it was hallucination, some cruel trick of a dying brain. But then it came again, steady, rhythmic, glowing through the fog like the heartbeat of the planet itself. He forced his legs to move. The wind screamed harder, trying to shove him back into oblivion, but desperation had its own strength. The light grew brighter until he saw it. A small dome half buried under snow, the membrane door pulsing faintly with heat. Cade stumbled forward, his gloved hand slapping against the surface. It hissed, a shimmer of static rippling across it, and then it parted. A wave of hot air rolled out, so sudden it felt violent. And there, framed in the doorway, stood a woman or something like one. Her skin was the color of burnished copper, lit from within as though fire pulsed beneath it. Long white hair whipped around her shoulders, and her eyes, deep amber, glowing faintly, watched him without blinking. She wore only a translucent wrap that shimmered like liquid glass, clinging to her hips, moving with each breath. Her voice cut through the storm, low and steady. "Share my bed or freeze." The words hit him like an electric current, absurd, surreal, yet perfectly logical in this dying cold. Cade blinked, half delirious, half entranced. The wind behind him wailed like a living creature. He looked once over his shoulder at the endless night, then back at her. "I don't even know your name," he managed. Her expression didn't change. "You don't need to." "Not yet." Then she turned and walked inside, the firelight rippling across her back. He followed, because instinct had already made the choice his mind couldn't. The door sealed behind him with a hiss, shutting out the howl of the storm. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Heat flooded the room, thick, heavy, suffocating after the cold. The air smelled faintly of smoke and sweet fruit. Cade leaned against the wall, panting, steam rising from his clothes as ice melted off in streams. "Take off that coat," she said, her tone neither cruel nor kind, just certain. He hesitated only a moment before obeying, fingers numb, peeling away layers that no longer kept anything out. When the last piece hit the floor, she nodded toward the low bed near the glowing brazier. "Sit, you're freezing." He did. The warmth pressed against his skin, sinking deep into the marrow. She approached, each step unhurried, her presence both alien and human, both mercy and danger. Her name came only after a long silence, softly spoken, as though testing how it sounded in his language. "Nareen." Cade repeated it once, and she smiled faintly, a flicker of light across her lips. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. Her palm was hot, almost burning, but beneath that heat was something pulsing, alive. He flinched, not from pain, but from the shock of feeling something again. "You'll live," she said, "if you stay close." And in that small, glowing room at the edge of a frozen world, Cade Vaughn, the man who had stopped believing in anything but the cold, crossed the line between death and warmth, between solitude and the beginning of something neither of them yet understood. The storm had not stopped screaming, but inside the small dome, the air throbbed with heat and heartbeat and the faint hiss of melting snow. Cade lay half-reclined on the edge of the wide, low bed, the alien fabric beneath him soft as breath. He hadn't meant to sleep, but exhaustion folded over him in waves until time lost meaning. When he woke again, light glowed dim and steady from a ring of metal coils near the wall. Nareen moved in that orange haze, silent, unhurried, every motion precise. She was grinding something with a small stone bowl, the rhythmic scrape steady as a metronome. Her wrap shimmered with each movement, catching the light like liquid fire. Cade tried to speak, but his throat caught, dry and raw. She turned, already holding a cup, steam curling from it. "Drink," she said. Her voice was softer now, not command, but habit, like someone who had forgotten what gentleness should sound like. He took it with shaking hands and sipped. The liquid was bitter at first, then rich, thick with warmth that spread down his chest and into his limbs. "What is it?" He managed. "Ferlin root," she said. "Keeps the blood moving." He set the cup down slowly, staring at her. "You live out here alone?" She tilted her head, hair falling like white silk down one side. "Who else would stay?" He almost laughed. A broken sound. "Who else could?" Naren's lips curved faintly, the ghost of a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You humans always think loneliness kills first. It doesn't. It teaches." Cade looked around the room, simple, efficient, everything handmade. The heat panels had been welded from scavenged parts. The floor plating mismatched. Every piece of it had her mark, her hand, her survival. "You built all this," he said quietly. "I had to." Her eyes flicked toward him, unreadable. "Your kind left this place to die. My kind was never invited to leave." The words hung in the air like ash. Cade wanted to ask more, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he said, "You saved me." "You knocked," she replied simply. "Most don't make it that far." He looked down at his hands, at the small tremor that still hadn't gone. "Why did you let me in?" Her answer came after a long silence. "Because I was tired of watching things freeze." That was when he realized he was still shirtless, that his skin steamed faintly in the heat. Naren noticed too. Her gaze flicked over him with clinical calm. "You're still cold inside," she murmured. "Your body hasn't decided to live yet." She crossed the space between them and reached out, pressing her palm to his chest again. The contact sent a jolt through him, heat and pulse, and something stranger, deeper. "You radiate like a furnace," he whispered. "It's what I am," she said. "It's how I survive." She stepped back and turned away before he could ask what that meant. He watched her shoulders move, the elegant precision of her spine under the translucent wrap. "You'll stay until the storm breaks," she said, her tone final. "Then you'll decide whether you want to die out there again?" Cade leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes following the flicker of her reflection in the steel. "And if I decide not to leave?" Naren paused. The silence stretched long enough for him to hear the faint crack of melting ice outside. "Then you'll have to learn what warmth costs." She turned her head slightly, the edge of her profile lit gold by the heater's glow. "It isn't free, Cade Vaughn." He didn't answer. He didn't know how. The storm outside hit the dome again, a hollow roar like the heartbeat of the world. Inside, the air shimmered with heat and a tension neither of them wanted to name. She moved closer, placing another log into the brazier. The flames rose, licking her skin in orange light. "Sleep if you can," she said. "The wind won't rest, but you must." He watched her for a long time, until his eyes blurred from the light. And when he finally lay down, the warmth of the room pressed against him like a living thing, breathing, whispering. He closed his eyes to the sound of Naren's quiet movements, the scrape of tools, the hum of alien machines. And for the first time in years, the silence did not feel like death. It felt like waiting. When the storm finally broke, it did not end quietly. The wind died in slow, shuddering breaths, leaving behind a world so still it felt haunted. Cade woke to silence, a deep, thick quiet that pressed against the walls of Naren's dome like snow against glass. Light filtered through the membrane window, thin and pale, catching in the vapor that drifted from the brazier. He sat up slowly, every joint aching as if he'd been asleep for days. The room smelled of smoke and metal and something faintly sweet. Naring was already awake. She stood near the far wall, working on a broken conduit with a set of small tools. Her movements were exact, efficient, like a machine programmed by memory and pain. Her hair was tied back with a strip of cloth, the white strands catching the dim light like frost. Cade watched her for a long moment before speaking. "You don't rest much, do you?" She didn't look up. "Things fall apart when I stop moving." He smiled faintly. "You talk like a mechanic." "I talk like someone who's been alive too long," she replied. Cade rose, pulling on his half-dried shirt. The fabric smelled of smoke, but it was warm. "You said I could decide when the storm ended," he said. "I decide to stay a little longer." This time she did look up. Her amber eyes glowed faintly in the half-light, unreadable, almost wary. "Humans don't stay," she said. "They repair, they eat, they thank me, and then they vanish into the white." He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Then maybe I'm not like the others." Naring turned back to her work, but her hands hesitated for the first time. "We'll see." He spent the morning helping her. The work was rough, improvised patching old power seals, reattaching thermal tubing, scraping frost from metal. The tools were half broken, scavenged from mining wrecks. But Cade's hands remembered how to work. The rhythm of repair steadied his breath. He'd been a survey clerk once, but the job had taught him more about machines than people. For the first time in months, he felt useful. When he finished, he stepped back, wiping his palms against his coat. "There, that should hold." Naring ran her fingers along the joint, testing the seal. Warm air hissed through the conduit, steady now. She looked at him, something like respect flickering across her face. "You work like someone who's afraid to stop." "Rest is expensive," he said. "Always has been." She made a soft sound, half laugh, half sigh. "You sound like my father. He was human." "No," she said quietly. "But he believed in fixing things that were already broken." She turned toward the brazier, poured 2 cups of steaming liquid, and handed him one. "Drink," she said again, softer this time. Cade sipped. It was the same bitter tea, but now it tasted different, less survival, more ritual. He studied her face in the flickering light. Her skin shimmered subtly, alive with warmth beneath the surface. "Your people," he asked, "the ones who didn't leave. Where are they now?" Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did just a shadow, quick and deep. "Gone. The humans called it evacuation. We called it exile." Cade frowned. "They left you here?" "They said our heat signatures were dangerous to the cryosystems. They said our kind couldn't sleep." She looked down at her cup, her voice barely above a whisper. "So we stayed awake while they froze." The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. Cade didn't know what to say. He set his cup down and said simply, Then they were wrong to leave you. Naren glanced up sharply, as if she hadn't expected him to say that. It doesn't matter now, she said. The cold kills slowly. But it kills everything. Cade shook his head. Not everything. He gestured toward the heater she had built, the walls she had sealed, the dome that had kept both of them alive. You built warmth out of nothing. That matters. For the first time, she smiled not the guarded curve of lips she used to deflect, but something real, small, almost human. You talk too much, she murmured. That's what keeps me warm, he said. Her smile lingered for just a breath longer before she turned away, pretending to busy herself with another panel. But Cade saw the change, the slight ease in her shoulders, the faint color rising under her skin. The house felt different after that. The air seemed lighter, less burdened by silence. They worked side by side, speaking little, but understanding much. Outside, the frozen world shimmered in pale light, endless and dead. Inside, Heap lived and breathed between two survivors who hadn't yet learned to call what they felt by its name. When night came, Cade sat by the brazier, watching the flames shift from gold to red. Naren moved quietly through the small space, checking seals, measuring airflow. When she passed him, their hands brushed barely a touch, but enough to send a current through the air. She didn't pull away. He looked up, met her eyes, and saw no fear there, only the same exhaustion, the same hunger for something that wasn't survival. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Naren said softly, "You should sleep, will you?" He asked. She hesitated. "Maybe." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'll wait." She gave him one last look, unreadable, before extinguishing the outer lights. The storm outside had finally fallen silent, but inside the dome, something new had started to breathe. The next morning dawned under a sky so pale it seemed made of ice itself. Cade woke to a low hum that wasn't wind, but machinery, a deep, pulsing thrum echoing from beneath the floor. Naren was crouched near the heating core, her expression sharp with concentration. Sparks flared blue as she rewired a cluster of thin copper conduits. Cade rubbed the sleep from his eyes and moved closer. "What's wrong?" She didn't look up. Something woke in the grid last night. External signal. Human frequency. He frowned, instantly alert. There shouldn't be anyone left within 100 clicks. "There isn't," she said flatly. "Not alive." The hum deepened, then clicked off. The silence that followed made the air feel too thick to breathe. Naren straightened, her white hair spilling down her back. "It's a retrieval drone," she said finally. "Alliance type. They sweep abandoned colonies, looking for tech salvage or survivors." Cade's pulse spiked. "You think they'll come here?" "They will," she said. "They always come when something still burns." He watched her move to the wall console, her fingers flying over a cracked screen. Data flickered in alien script. "What happens if they find us?" He asked. She stopped typing. "They'll take you. And they'll erase me." Cade stared at her, struggling to read her tone. There was no fear in it, only the dull certainty of someone who had thought through this outcome 1,000 times. "Why erase?" he asked quietly. "Because I'm not human enough to save and not alien enough to study," she said. "My people called it the space between species. Your alliance called it contamination." The word hit harder than the cold ever had. "You think I care about that?" he said. "You should," she replied, looking up at him. "Because it'll kill you too." Cade crossed the floor, closing the distance between them. "Then let it." She stared at him, amber eyes burning in the half-light. "You'd throw away your second chance?" "What second chance?" He said. "There's nothing left out there." The wind outside began to rise again, thin, ghostly. The sound of it through the membranes reminded him of breathing like the world itself was watching. Nareen stepped closer, voice low. "You don't understand what I am." "Then explain it," he said. "Make me understand." Her breath shook once before she spoke. "We were made to generate heat. Our bodies convert radiation, friction, even pain into energy. It keeps us alive where nothing else can survive. But when we bond, when we share that energy, it doesn't come back." Cade's heartbeat stumbled. "You mean you're burning yourself to keep me alive?" "It's not as simple as that," she said, but the flicker in her eyes betrayed her. "Every human I've ever helped froze within days anyway. You're the first one who didn't." Cade took a step forward, close enough to feel the faint radiation coming off her skin, the ghost of warmth that had saved him. "Then stop," he said. "Don't waste it on me." "Too late," she whispered. "The link's made." The hum beneath the floor surged again, louder now. Naren's head snapped toward the window. "They're here." Cade moved to the door instinctively, peering through the translucent membrane. A pale shape drifted above the Ridge and Alliance drone, black and silver, moving with eerie precision, its sensors glowing blue through the haze. "If it scans this dome," he began, but she cut him off. "It already has." She ran to the console, slamming a hand against the controls. The lights flickered, dimmed, and then everything went dark. The heat vanished with it. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Cade's breath came out in white clouds. "You killed the power." "Better cold than found," she said. He could barely see her now, just the faint orange shimmer of her skin. The drone's hum grew louder, a metallic heartbeat circling above. Cade reached for her arm. "We can hide you under the floor in the vent." "It won't matter," she said, shaking her head. "Their scanners pick up energy residue." "I can't mask that." He looked at her, then at the darkness outside, the blue glow sweeping back and forth across the snow. "Then what do we do?" She turned toward him, eyes luminous in the dark. "We wait. You stay quiet. If they breach the door, you say you forced entry, that you found me dead." "I'm not saying that," he hissed. "You will if you want to live." "I'd rather die warm than live like that." She stared at him, something raw flickering across her face. "You talk like a soldier." "I'm not," he said. "Just someone who's done being alone." For a moment, she said nothing. The drone's light flared across the window, and its mechanical whine filled the air. Then, finally, it faded, rising into the clouds, its sound swallowed by distance. The heat panels flickered back on with a sigh, weak but steady. Nareen leaned against the wall, her body trembling faintly. Cade reached for her, catching her before she slipped. Her skin was colder now, the inner fire dimmer. "You gave it too much," he murmured. She looked up at him, lips curved in a ghost of a smile. "You're still alive." "That's enough." He held her close, feeling her pulse struggle against his chest. Outside, the sky cracked open, and a soft light spread across the ridge, the storm breaking, the world still frozen, but faintly glowing. Inside the dome, Cade realized that warmth, once shared, was not just a mercy. It was a promise. And promises always cost. The sky over Red Hen 9 softened to a pale silver the next day, the first light Cade had seen in months that didn't cut like a blade. The storm had gone, leaving behind drifts sculpted into shapes that looked like waves frozen mid-motion. Inside the dome, the air still trembled with leftover heat, though Cade could feel the edge of it thinning. Nareen slept curled against the wall, her breathing shallow, her skin dimmer than before. The steady, radiant glow he had grown used to was now faint, pulsing low like an ember trying to stay alive. He sat near her, watching the rise and fall of her chest, every small movement deliberate and fragile. The memory of the drone's hum still echoed in his head. He'd never felt so useless watching her burn herself down to keep him breathing. When she stirred, her eyes opened slowly, the amber inside them dulled to bronze. "You stayed awake all night?" she said, voice rough. "Someone had to," he replied. "You nearly collapsed." She tried to sit up, wincing at the effort. "I told you, it's part of the bond. You draw warmth, I lose it." Cade leaned forward, his tone hardening. "Then break it. Whatever this connection is, sever it before it kills you." Naren's expression was faintly amused, though the curve of her lips barely moved. "If I could, I would have done it years ago. My kind was built to give, not to stop." She looked toward the window, where the thawing light shimmered faintly on the snow. "You humans think love is a choice. For us, it's physics." He didn't answer right away. He stood, moving to the brazier, stirring the coals until they flared bright orange. "Then maybe you can teach me how to give it back." She laughed softly at that, the sound breaking into a cough. "You can't. It's not how we work." "Then I'll learn how," he said. "If it's physics, I'll change the rules." Naren's eyes softened, her head tilting as if seeing something she hadn't before. "You really mean that?" "I mean every word," he said. "You saved me. Let me save you." For a moment, silence filled the dome, thick and fragile. Then she nodded once, slow and uncertain, as though agreeing to something she didn't quite believe in. "If you want to help, there's an old heat relay outside the ridge," she said quietly. "It used to feed the lower mining grid. If we reactivate it, the output might be enough to sustain both of us." Cade grabbed his coat without hesitation. "Tell me what to look for." "You'll know," she said. "It'll hum even in death." The journey was brutal. The snow was no longer a storm, but it clung to his boots in heavy sheets, each step sinking deep into frozen dust. The world outside was colorless white sky, white ground, white ruin. The sun, dim and distant, hung above like a dying eye. When he reached the relay station, half buried under collapsed steel, it looked beyond repair, its surface corroded, panels torn away. But when he pressed his ear to the metal, he heard it, a faint rhythmic pulse like a sleeping heart. He spent hours clearing snow and welding new joints with his small plasma torch, his hands shaking from cold and fatigue. The machine came alive with a low growl, light flickering through cracked conduits. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Cade stayed until the temperature reading on his wrist began to climb. Then he turned back toward the dome, lungs burning with frost. Inside, Naren was waiting by the window, her skin faintly luminous again. When she saw him, she exhaled a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. "You did it," she said. He dropped his tools and crossed to her. "It's not much, but it should keep the heat stable." She reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed his face. "You're frozen." "You're not," he said, voice hoarse. "That's balance enough." They stood like that for a long moment, the silence around them soft and alive. Then she whispered, "You don't understand what you've done." "I fixed a relay," he said. "You did more than that. You gave the bond somewhere else to go." He frowned, confused, but she smiled tired, gentle, the kind of smile that carried both gratitude and sorrow. "It means I can stop feeding it. You'll stay warm now." "Even if I?" She trailed off, but he caught her meaning and shook his head violently. "No, don't finish that. You can't stop what's built into my skin," she said. "The relay will hold for weeks." "That's enough." Cade pulled her into his arms, feeling the faint tremor of her heartbeat against his chest. "Then we make it more than weeks." She rested her forehead against his neck. "You sound like someone who believes in forever." I stopped believing in everything else, he said. They stayed like that, pressed close in the flicker of the fire, while the wind outside turned quiet again. Later, when they lay side by side, her head resting against his shoulder, Naren whispered, "You remember the night you came to my door? I remember every second. You thought I was saving you. Weren't you?" She smiled faintly. "No, you were saving me. I just didn't know it yet." Cade kissed her hair, the faint scent of smoke and metal clinging to it. The world outside was thawing. He could hear the slow drip of melting ice against the window. He didn't know what the next storm would bring, or if there would be another one at all. But for now, the heat stayed steady and alive. And for the first time since the world had turned white, Cade Von let himself believe that warmth could last by the time the thaw reached the ridge. Red Hen 9 no longer looked like a world that had died. It looked like one that had been holding its breath. The snow peeled back in slow motion, revealing black stone and rusted machines long buried under ice. Thin rivers of meltwater carved silver lines through the valley. Cade stood outside the dome at dawn, breathing air that didn't sting anymore. The light was weak but warm on his face, and the sound of dripping water filled the silence that used to belong only to the wind. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. Naren stepped out barefoot, her orange skin catching the sun like molten glass. She wore his coat over her shoulders, the sleeves hanging past her hands. For a moment, they just stood together in the thin light, the cold still biting at the edges of the air, but not enough to matter. "You should be resting," he said. She smiled faintly. "You say that every morning, because you never listen." "Because I'm not tired anymore," she murmured. But he could see the truth. Her glow was dimmer, the light beneath her skin fading like the last coals in a dying fire. "The relay's holding," he said, trying to sound steady. "You don't have to give it everything." She looked at him, eyes gentle and knowing. "Cade, you can't fix what isn't broken. You're fading." "No," she said softly. "I'm changing." He didn't argue, couldn't. Instead, he took her hand and led her down the small slope behind the dome. The world there was new again. Patches of black soil steamed where the ice had retreated. Strange alien grass, long, thin, almost silver, was beginning to push through. Naren knelt, brushing her fingers through the damp earth. "When I was little," she said, "my father told me warmth always returns. You just have to live long enough to see it." She looked up at him with a faint smile. "I never thought I would." Cade crouched beside her. "You did more than see it. You made it." She turned her hand, lacing her fingers with his. Her skin was cool now, but her touch still carried that strange pulse of life he'd come to know better than his own heartbeat. "You know what we call this on my world?" she asked. "When the frost breaks and the first light comes back." "What?" "The last fire." Her voice was quiet, reverent. "It means the body's heat has done its work. The rest belongs to the sun." Cade swallowed hard. "You talk like you're saying goodbye." "Maybe I am." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "The relay will keep running, even if I stop feeding it. You'll have warmth now. Enough to live. Enough for both of us," he said. "That's what I fixed it for." She smiled sadly. "You still don't understand, do you? The bond doesn't share heat anymore. It replaced it. You carry mine now." Cade froze. "What?" "That's why I'm dimming," she said softly. "The transfer finished when you started the relay. It locked the circuit. You'll stay warm. I'll fade." He shook his head, backing away as if denial could rewrite the law of the world. "No, we'll break it. We'll reroute it. There's a way to—" "Stop," she said gently. "You'll make it worse." He stared at her, the light behind his eyes burning, not from heat, but from grief. "You can't ask me to just let you. I'm not asking, she said, stepping forward. I'm telling you what's already happening. Her hand rose to his face, thumb brushing his jaw. You think you owe me your life, Cade Vaughn, but I didn't save you to be owed. I saved you because I wanted to see someone remember what warmth felt like. Tears stung his eyes before he could stop them. She smiled when she saw. You humans, she whispered. You only believe something's alive when it hurts. He caught her hand, pressed it to his chest. Then I'll hurt forever, if that's what it takes. She leaned in and kissed him, slow and quiet, their breath mingling in the cool air. Her lips were cooler now, her touch light as snow melting on skin. When she pulled back, the glow beneath her surface was barely visible. Promise me one thing, she said. Don't let the fire die. Not here. Not ever. He nodded, though he couldn't speak. She smiled once more, faint and peaceful, and the light inside her flickered one last time. The warmth in her skin flowed into his palms, an impossible, weightless heat that sank into him like breath. Then she was still. The sun climbed higher, spilling light across the ridge, and the world turned gold. Cade stayed kneeling beside her until the air itself felt heavy with silence. By dusk, the dome burned with a steady orange glow, the relay humming like a heartbeat. He buried her beneath the ridge, where the first green shoots had begun to rise through the soil. When night fell, he returned to the dome and stood by the window. The stars above were distant and cold, but the heat inside the room was steady, alive. He placed a hand against the glass, feeling it pulse beneath his skin, the same rhythm he'd felt in her heartbeat. The bond hadn't died with her. It lived, quiet and constant, humming through every circuit and every breath he took. Outside, the wind whispered through the thawing valley. Inside, the warmth endured. Cade closed his eyes and whispered into the quiet, You're still here. And in the pulse of the heater, the soft glow of the firelight, the rhythm of his heart answering back, he knew she was.